Before the sun rose over the broken roofs of the old neighborhood, Amina was already awake. The world around her slept in silence, but her life had never known rest. The thin walls of her mud brick house carried the cold of the night, and the air smelled faintly of dust and smoke from yesterday's fire. She wrapped her faded shawl tightly around her shoulders and sat up on the straw mat that served as her bed. Her knees ached. They always did. Time had bent her body the way poverty bends metal, slowly, relentlessly, without mercy. Amina placed her feet on the cold ground and whispered a quiet prayer. Ya Allah, give me strength for another day. There was no mirror in her home, but if there had been, it would have shown a woman well past her years. Her hair, once thick and black, was now streaked with white. Fine lines traced her face like maps of sorrow and patience. Her hands, rough, scarred, trembling slightly, were hands that had worked all their lives and still held nothing. Yet those hands had fed hundreds. Outside, the alley was still dark. A stray cat rummaged through a pile of discarded cloth. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, its call echoing between half-collapsed walls and forgotten homes. Amina moved slowly toward the small clay stove near her door. It was cracked on one side and held together by old wire, but it still worked, just enough. She knelt down and opened a tin container. Inside was rice. Not much. Barely enough for herself. She stared at it for a long moment. This pause was part of her daily ritual. Not hesitation, but acceptance. She already knew what she would do. She always did. Amina poured the rice into a rusted pot, added water from a chipped jug, and lit the fire. The flames flickered weakly, but they obeyed her, licking the bottom of the pot like obedient servants. As the rice began to boil, memories stirred, uninvited, relentless. There was a time when this house was louder. There had been laughter once. Her husband, Yusuf, had been a laborer with tired eyes and a hopeful smile. He used to come home with dust on his clothes and stories in his mouth, stories of a better future, of savings, of a house with a real roof. Then came the illness, then the deaths, then the silence. Yusuf had passed away on a night much like this one, quiet, cold, and cruel. Amina had held his hand until it went still, whispering prayers while the world moved on without them. They had no children, and so, when he was gone, she was truly alone. Neighbors had helped for a while. Sympathy has a short lifespan, though. Soon, doors closed, eyes turned away. Life demanded survival, not compassion. Amina learned quickly. No one was coming to save her. So she saved herself. She washed clothes for others. She swept courtyards. She stitched torn garments for coins that barely lasted a day. Some nights, she slept hungry. Some mornings, she woke weaker. But even then, even when her own stomach burned with emptiness, she never ignored the hunger of others. By late morning, the smell of rice drifted through the alley. That smell was a signal. The poor knew it well. They came slowly at first, like shadows testing the light. An old man with a crooked back and cloudy eyes. A widow clutching the hand of her thin daughter. Two boys whose clothes hung on them like borrowed fabric. They gathered quietly, sitting on the ground near her door. No one knocked. No one asked. Amina stepped outside with the pot, her breath shallow but steady. She served them one by one. Small portions, carefully measured, enough to ease hunger, not erase it. Her hands shook as she scooped the rice, but her face remained calm. She looked into their eyes as she fed them, not with pity, but with dignity. To her, they were not beggars. They were people. Some days, the crowd was larger. Some days, it was smaller. But it never disappeared. And neither did the whispers. She's foolish, people said behind her back. She gives when she has nothing. Charity won't save her. Once, a woman from the neighborhood confronted her openly. Amina, she scoffed, you're feeding mouths that will never remember you. You think kindness pays rent. Amina smiled, wiping her hands on her shawl. I don't feed them so they remember me, she replied. I feed them so Allah remembers me. Among those who came daily were 3 brothers. No one knew their full story. They arrived together, always quietly, always politely. The eldest couldn't have been more than 18. The youngest looked barely 10. Their clothes were worn but clean, stitched carefully, as if their mother, wherever she was, had once cared deeply. They never pushed forward. They never complained. They sat at the edge, waiting until everyone else had been served. The youngest used to glance at the pot nervously, as if afraid it would empty before his turn. The middle brother would place a hand on his shoulder, whispering something meant to calm him. Amina noticed. She always noticed. One afternoon, when the pot was nearly empty, Amina hesitated. Only one serving left. 2 people waiting. The brothers exchanged glances. The eldest stood up. "Ami," he said softly, "we'll come another day." Amina looked at him sharply. "Sit," she said. She divided the portion carefully, ensuring both plates held something. The youngest's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you crying?" Amina asked gently. Because no one does this for us," he whispered. Amina felt something crack inside her chest. She reached out and placed her hand on his head. "Then remember this," she said. "Kindness exists, even when the world pretends it doesn't." Days turned into weeks. Weeks into years. The seasons changed, but Amina's routine did not. Every morning, she cooked. Every day, she gave. Every night, she slept with an empty pot and a full heart. Her body grew weaker. Her eyesight dimmed. Sometimes, hunger made her dizzy. Still, she never stopped. Until one day, the brothers did not come. At first, Amina thought nothing of it. People disappeared all the time. The next day, they didn't come again. Nor the next. She asked quietly, but no one knew. Or no one cared. Life moved on. The alley grew quieter. The crowds thinned. Amina's pot grew smaller. Her hands shook more. Years passed. And slowly, the woman who fed everyone, became invisible herself. But even as the world forgot her, time was watching. Chapter 2. Time has a strange way of keeping records. It does not forget hunger. It does not forget tears. And it never forgets kindness done in silence. Years had passed since the 3 brothers disappeared from the alley, but Amina's life remained unchanged, except that everything had grown heavier. Her mornings were slower now. Her steps dragged across the dusty floor, her breath came shorter, and the small stove seemed farther away than it once had. The pot was still there, cracked and rusted, but many days it stayed empty. The crowd that once gathered outside her door had thinned. Hunger had found new corners of the city. Sometimes, there was no rice at all. On those days, Amina drank water and whispered prayers instead. The neighbors barely noticed her anymore. People who had once mocked her generosity now passed her door without looking. New families had moved in. Old faces had vanished. The alley itself felt older, quieter, like it, too, was tired of remembering. Amina did not complain. She had learned long ago that life does not listen to complaints. She spent her afternoons sitting near the doorway, her shawl wrapped tightly around her thin frame, watching the world pass by. Children ran through the alley chasing a punctured ball. Vendors shouted from a distance. Life continued, just not with her. Sometimes, she wondered if her kindness had been foolish. Not with regret, but with curiosity. "Ya Allah," she would whisper, "you know why I did what I did." That was enough. The day the sky opened. One evening, the sky darkened early. Heavy clouds rolled in, thick and restless, and the air smelled of rain. Amina sat alone, listening as the first drops hit the earth, slow at first, then faster, louder, until the rain poured like a curtain between the world and her door. She struggled to stand and pull a torn sheet over the entrance to keep the water out. Her hands trembled, her knees protested, age had claimed its due. Then she heard it, a sound that did not belong. The low hum of engines. Not one, several. They grew louder, closer, until they stopped right outside her alley. Amina froze. Engines like that did not come here. The rain softened, but the silence that followed was heavy. Curious neighbors peeked from their doors. Whispers spread quickly. Whose cars are those? Did someone important get lost? Why would they come here? Amina felt a strange unease settle in her chest. Then came a knock. Firm, respectful, not hurried. She stared at the door as if it might vanish. No one knocked on her door anymore. Slowly, Painfully, she reached for the latch and pulled it open. The men at the door. 3 men stood outside, tall, well-dressed, soaked slightly from the rain, but standing straight, composed. Behind them, black cars lined the narrow street like shadows that did not belong. For a moment, Amina thought she was dreaming. She blinked. The men looked at her, and something in their faces broke. Their eyes filled first, then their voices. Assalamu alaikum, Ami. The word hit her like a memory she hadn't touched in years. Her heart skipped. She looked closer. The eyes, the silence, the way they stood slightly back, respectfully, as if afraid to take up too much space. Her breath caught. Is it you? She whispered. The eldest stepped forward, unable to hold himself any longer. He fell to his knees, rain soaking into his expensive clothes, his hands trembling as he reached for her feet. We found you, he said, his voice breaking. We searched for years. The other 2 followed, kneeling beside him. The alley went silent. Amina's legs weakened. She held onto the doorframe to steady herself. Stand up, she said, her voice barely audible. Why are you doing this? The middle brother looked up, tears mixing with rain. Because you taught us how to stand. The story of the years. They sat inside her small home, too large for it, too bright, too full of memories. The rain dripped steadily outside as the brothers spoke. After leaving the town, they told her, life had been cruel at first. They worked wherever they could, construction sites, factories, markets. They slept on floors, skipped meals, and faced rejection again and again. But every time they felt like giving up, they remembered the woman who fed them when she had nothing. If she could give while starving, the youngest said softly. We could survive while struggling. They saved small amounts. They took risks. They failed, often. Years later, an opportunity came. A small business. Then another. Then growth they never expected. But they never forgot her. They returned to the alley many times, only to find her gone. Neighbors changed. Streets changed. Even the name of the area changed. Still, they kept searching. Success meant nothing, the eldest said. Until we could find you. The return of the debt. The next morning, the alley woke to a miracle. Workers arrived. Walls were repaired. A proper roof replaced the broken one. Neighbors watched in disbelief as Amina's home transformed before their eyes. But Amina sat quietly on a stool, overwhelmed. Stop, she said finally. Why are you doing all this? The eldest knelt beside her again. We are not repaying a debt, he said gently. We are honoring a lesson. They arranged care for her. Food, medicine, comfort. They ensured she would never sleep hungry again. Yet Amina's eyes filled with tears, not of joy, but humility. I never fed you for this, she said. The youngest smiled. We know. The final understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky gold, Amina sat outside her renewed home. The alley felt alive again. Children laughed. Neighbors greeted her, and the brothers sat quietly nearby. Amina looked at them and spoke softly. Allah did this, she said. Not me. The eldest nodded. Yes, he replied. He used you. Amina closed her eyes, her heart finally at rest. She had fed the poor with empty hands. And time, patient, faithful time, returned the debt in full. Final message. Kindness never disappears. It only waits for the right moment to return. Often in ways greater than we imagined.